I'm honored to be here. I was excited about this, so thank you.
Awesome. So for those who are unaware, I am speaking to Dani Hagan right now. Dani Hagan is an LA-based singer-songwriter. She's played all the spots that you can think of when you think of LA, including the Viper Room. And I've heard nothing but great things about her. I mean, her recent single is out now. That's Good Guy. And I'm a huge fan of the song. I immediately fell in love with the Jam in the Van EP, which you had done, and you performed about 3 songs, I believe, and all stellar. I thought it was a great showcase for you as far as showing your range, not only as a songwriter, but as a vocalist. I thought that was really important to see that showcase of your abilities. So how was it doing that Jam in the Van showcase, by the way?
That was, that was such an amazing experience. I didn't know how much I would love that. And I showed up with my band, and it was just like this really unique LA experience of, you literally get into this van and they've got like 3 cameras set up on you, and they've got a sound team in the front of the band. You're performing in the back of the van. And that was just like a really iconic moment in the beginning of my career.
It's incredible. And I mean, to me, it's really interesting. I always like to get down to the origin story, especially for first-time guests on the show. Seeing that you're a much younger artist, but it seems to me like you've been actively working on your craft for quite some time now, and you only really started to publicly showcase that as of like a couple of years ago, in 2020, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I popped out singing. I've been into music ever since I was a kid. I started to teach myself piano when I was 5. I wrote my first song. I didn't tell anybody about it, but I wrote my first song when I was 9. And then right after high school, I bought a guitar, and that's when I really started to find my own voice, because I have a lot of musical background and classical training in every possible form you could imagine. I've had hundreds of teachers and thousands of hours of training. And it wasn't until I bought my guitar where I was like, oh, that's what my voice sounds like. Instead of trying to sit into this pocket of like, okay, we're competing with opera music, you have to put on your operatic voice. And I never liked it. And then musical theater, you're always playing a character. But then I bought a guitar, and I was like, I wasn't trying to be anybody else. And that's when I really was like, okay, here's where my voice is. And then, you know, as years have gone on, and I've gained more experience and gotten more comfortable in myself. And really in the last couple of years, I've really defined somehow who I am as an artist and a vocalist, and that's when I started getting attention for it. So it's something lining up.
So this has been like a long time coming for you. You've put in the hours, but you've been very much working on it behind the scenes, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And now you felt comfortable enough to say, okay, I'm ready to showcase my abilities and my talents now.
Well, you know, I've always been a performer. I've always been on stage. I've always been doing shows. And like, I came out to LA not with the intention of being a musician. I came out here after living in New York City for a while, and I was like, okay, I was doing off Broadway in New York. And I was like, okay, well, let's go to LA and see if I can do some screen, because you can play 14 on Broadway until you're 45. So I figured, okay, let's get some screen time while I can. And I did really well as an actress, and I enjoyed it, but I missed something. I was missing the stage and that the audience interacting with you. And so I grabbed my guitar and I started performing around LA. And so I've been performing here for a long time, but again, once I really stepped into myself, that's when I started, I guess, getting a little bit more attention for it.
What I really like, and if anybody's interested in checking out, which I strongly suggest they do, starting from the beginning, really start with Baby Come Home, which was the first single you released.
Yeah.
There's something about what you bring to the table that for me is what I look for when I seek out artists, which is the look but as well as the songs. I mean, you have the songwriting is there, but you also have that performance aspect. And I think that duality is really what makes you the complete package. You got the range, you got the vocals, but you also have the performance ability, it seems like. And seems like you channel a lot of that into the videos too, as far as like the acting ability and whatnot. So I think it all works hand in hand.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, growing up in community theater, acting, singing, and dancing all go hand in hand. Like even I was a dancer for years and years and years. I don't do it professionally anymore, but it's what I went to school for. I was a dancer, and but you can't, like, you need the music to dance to, and you got to tell the story. So there's got to be an element of acting with the movement, with the music, and no matter which one is at the front of the project, they're all that underlying foundation of like, I can't sing without telling you a story and like embodying that story to project it to you and the music behind it. So they're all very much ingrained in each other, in me, I guess.
Right. And going back to the very beginning, as far as influences go, was there anybody in particular that started you on that track, whether it be musical or in theater or in the acting world? Who were your earliest influences as a performer?
Well, again, I have a lot of musical theater background, but honestly, my grandma bought me this album called Little Girls All Grown Up. And it was full of songs from like the 40s, 50s, and 60s, very much like leader of the pack style type of music. And I was raised on that kind of doo-wop, a little bit jazzy. And I'm realizing now that that really was such a heavy influence for me. But then the interesting thing is, I met a man named Jeff Barry, and I didn't know who he was. I knew he was a songwriter, and we were introduced to each other because somebody else thought like, you two need to know each other, and we just clicked immediately. Like, we're like, I need to know more about you. So I went home and I researched him. Turns out he wrote all the songs that I was raised on. He's like this legendary rock and roll Hall of Fame songwriter from the 60s, and he's literally legendary. I was raised on his music, and then he took me on as this up and coming songwriter and became my mentor for years. And so that's been like this constant influences, Jeff Barry, in that style of jazzy doo-wop kind of bluesy music.
It's incredible. And then from the performing side, as far as in theater, in the theater world, was there anybody in particular that you were looking at as an influence?
Um, Not necessarily, because honestly, I have a little bit of a sheltered background. I'm from North Dakota, and I was just so consumed with my studies that I guess I was always studying a role. And again, a lot of it was just musical theater, that presentation of singing to the back of the house without a microphone. And it wasn't until I got my guitar and I moved out to New York City where I was introduced to Journey and some classic rock. And I was like, what is this? How have I not known about this before? I'm so late to the party. And I think the biggest influences for me is probably ZZ Ward and Grace Potter, where they're these blues rock girls with a band behind them. They've got the soul. There's like just a little sprinkling of pop on the top, and that's kind of where my music's really settled into, is the Grace Potter, ZZ Ward, bluesy rock stream, I guess.
Yeah, I something that I immediately thought like your music was reminiscent of was that 90s era of where there was a lot of women in rock, and in the mainstream, that is, that were just providing people with this really powerful, emotionally, like, just in your face, unrelenting, kick ass. I mean, Sass Jordan, Alanis Morissette, Joan Osborne, Tori Amos. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. As far as, I mean, in the 90s, it was huge. I mean, Fiona Apple, even, there's a lot of art. Yeah. And to me, it's refreshing to hear. I mean, of course, you have modern artists doing that, like Grace Potter. Someone I'm really into now goes under the name Dorothy. Incredible.
Yeah,
she's awesome. So it's cool. I feel like it's nice to see that back, because I feel like there's something lacking a little bit there, as far as that needs to be recognized more. We need to see some more of that out there in the mainstream and out in the world again.
Yeah, and I think I remember stealing my sister's albums. She had Alanis Morissette, Fiona Apple, and Jewel, and like when I started first performing, a lot of people were referencing those artists to me because again, they were like the albums that I had stolen from my sister, and again, late to the party. But when I did find them, I was like, oh, this is just so charged, and there's such a story behind it. And current music has gotten a little bit watered down, but intensified at the same time, where and for me, the emotion behind a song is what drives the story. And I'm not willing to sacrifice that just to have a hook that's gonna grab you in and then repeat for 3 minutes straight. That just bores me to tears. Like, I need an arc of a storyline, and I love having that emotional depth. And I'm not afraid to tackle that. Like, I like to dive in deep, and I've come to realize I use the word deep or dive deep, or I have a single that's not released yet that's called Deeper. And I'm starting to recognize patterns in my own songwriting. I'm like, oh, well, that's a reflection of my true self, of what my current discovery is like going in deeper. And yeah, so I appreciate that. Thank you for that reference.
Of course.
Mine as well.
I think it's really important too, and we kind of brought this up in our conversation a few minutes ago, but the idea of building an artist to me has been somewhat lost in the digital age. The idea of like, I'm going to go gigging for 5 to 10 years. You're not really going to see me out there in public. You're not going to hear about me unless you happen to find me playing, performing, building my craft, putting my 10,000 hours in these little clubs here and there for, like I said, anywhere between 5 and 10 years. And then you come out a lot more fully formed than some of these artists that are out nowadays, where it's like almost immediate, because you can just post stuff on SoundCloud. You can just post stuff on the internet, YouTube, wherever you want. It's really easy. You don't need to work with record labels anymore. So a lot of these bedroom pop artists are coming out in the last decade where they're not really fully formed yet. They're still building their songcraft, and some of it works out for them, I guess. And then some of it's a little, I don't know. I feel like maybe a little bit more time under wraps could have benefited them. And I feel like in your case, you're kind of going that old school route, where you have been kind of building your craft for a while now. And it's only now that you feel comfortable enough to really come out and say, here are my songs.
Well, I think it's interesting, the bedroom pop stars, it's very reflective of where our internet culture is right now. And I think it's necessary in order to survive in the current times. Like, you have to be able to have that social media platform. And but I'm a live artist. I want to get up on stage. I want audience in front of me, not behind the screen. That's because the reason why I do this is the connection. Like, I want to share what I'm feeling. I want to make you feel something. I want to draw you in, and I want to have this moment with you. And that's where that power is really generated for me. And there's this amazing connection that you find through the screen, because you are exposed to these masses of people, but there's such a disconnect at the same time. But yeah, I definitely got my seasoning training in, or like doing little tours around LA. There was a promoter that took me under again, just took a risk on me. He's like, yeah, kid, all right, get up here and you can perform. His name was Happening Harry. And he saw something in me. And so he would use me to I was at the Cat Club. It was like this little dive bar. And it would start with very singer-songwriter-y girls on their guitar and very soft and sweet kind of cafe style. And then it would go into hard metal, hard rock, like rock and roll. And he would use me to transition between the two, because I had this ability to grab both audiences, like these biker guys in leather and chains. And I'm so green, so fresh on the scene. And I'm in like this little cute dress and my guitar, but I was singing these heartfelt, like really kind of edgy songs, very Alanis Morissette vibes. And these biker guys would come up and they would sit there and they would just listen to me. So I would kind of transition the night. And that was where I started to get my seasoning of just how to perform for a range of audience. And that's something that I love, but the industry struggles with. I like not fitting into a box. I like being able to cross genres and, be accepted by the singer-songwriters, but still be accepted by the rock and rollers and the people that are trying to people like to put you in a box. So it confuses them sometimes, but I like to color outside the lines, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like I listening to like a song like Baby Come Home, and you listen to like I'm Jolene, you can already hear like there's something different happening. You're not someone that can be pigeonholed right away. You think I thought I had an idea of where you're going. And don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, you have an identity. And I think that's important to mention. There's a lot, like you said, a lot of these artists that I personally fell in love with could tackle all sorts of genres and all sorts of different musical landscapes, but you always knew of their identity. Their identity always would seep through it somehow. You always knew it was them because they had a very distinct way of either singing a song or writing a song, that no matter what genre, that little part of them was still there and was still intact. They didn't lose sight of their unique personality and what they were bringing to that musical landscape.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing is the song. You should be able to take a song, strike it down to just one vocalist, one instrument, and the song should still shine and still get that story and still pull you in. And then you take that song and you can dress it up in any genre that you like. But if it's a good song, every genre is going to want to sing it. Every genre is going to be able to transform it while it's still a standalone good song. So that's what my roots always is the song comes first. And then the production around it that's why a producer is so important to help you to maintain that image or that branding and that sense of self. But strip it all down and you still just have me.
That's right. And with all that being said, it always intrigues me, the songwriting process for any artist. I think what someone goes through psychologically, spiritually when they're writing a song is different. It's case by case. But in your case, what is the journey that you go on when you decide to sit down and write a song? Is it something that does a melody just pop in your head one day and then you keep in your chord and then you come back to it later? You make time to sit down and actually say, I'm going to write a song today. How does that work for you?
Well, it's different from song to song, but I do try and carve out a chunk of time every day for the opportunity for creativity, but you don't want to force it. So like, yeah, I've got this 2-hour time frame where I would like to sit down and write a song, but if inspiration's not coming, I'm not going to force it. But I don't go anywhere without my lyric book. It's right next to me almost at all times. Now, granted, with purses getting bigger and phones getting bigger, you carry this around and you type little, like, lyrics are constantly going through. I think in iambic pentameter, because my background is theater, so I was raised on Shakespeare, so you'll find that iambic pentameter in my songwriting, the cadence. So that's just the natural flow of my thoughts. So I constantly have a poetic thought going through my mind when I'm experiencing something, just because that's how I process it, is in a very romantic type of way. And then I'll jot it down, ideally in my lyric book, but I use my phone as well. But for me, like, I'll walk around and I write out my guitar tabs. Everything is color coded. I write in very colorful pens, so I know which song that I'm on. And I also have a condition called synaesthesia, where I experience music through colors through music and vice versa. So I think that's part of the reason why I use colorful pens. I've been like that my whole life. But I'll sit down and sometimes I'll be in the middle of doing something, cooking dinner, and I'll just have to stop, let the dinner burn. I hear a melody and it just flows through you. You got to hit the record button. And then a lot of the times my best songs have been written in roughly 5 minutes. It just comes out of you, and then you develop it over the next hour. And then you come up for air and you're like, oh, I think I just wrote something. I think that's a good one. So that's generally how it goes. But I love the process of it. For me, like, I'll pour a glass of wine, I'll sit down with my colorful pens and my lyric book, and I'll just sit there and I'll feel, and whatever I'm thinking as I'm feeling, it comes out, and it just comes out in the form of a song. It's just a very natural, and I've learned to hone that craft and to carve it out and to make it a little bit more defined and structured to fit into the musical needs. But it's a very natural, it's just like breathing.
I've heard of that before, that the idea of having synaesthesia. Lord, I believe, was one of the first times I ever heard of that. And I find that incredibly interesting. I mean, I wish I could you can literally see music, right? In a way, it's like through colors and all this. That must be really, really, really neat. I mean, in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that I had it until a couple of years ago, because it's one of those things where like I just thought everybody could see the colors that were being played on that instrument. But I do a lot of neurological studies with neuroscience and how it relates to the body and everything. Because as a dancer, and Pilates has been a big part of my life, and I have a little bit of a gift of a healer, so I like to kind of mold that all together. But in my studies, the neurological studies, I was literally reading through a textbook, and I read synaesthesia. I'm like, wait, I have that. It's a condition? This isn't normal. And it is actually quite common for artists. But it's a really beautiful way to experience life. And it's, since I've learned that I had it, I kind of learned how to flex it a little bit, to turn up the volume on it, to if I put focus on it, it gets really, really, the colors get really loud. Or I can turn the volume down and it just becomes white noise in the background. A little distracting, as it always has been my whole life. So like if I'm having a conversation with somebody and there's music on, I have a really hard time focusing, because the music, not only the music is pulling focus, but the colors are pulling focus. And it's interesting.
It all makes sense now. So you're very superhuman as an artist. Explains why the music, everything kind of comes together. The way that you feel music, see music, and the way that comes across when people hear your songs. It's very evident that you've pulled and tapped into all these resources that you yourself carry as a human being, and honed in on them, refined them, and turned it into a concise listening experience for your audience, which I think is really cool.
Thank you. So interesting to hear somebody else's perspective, because it's just my existence, and you speak it out loud. It's like, oh, no, I really do have a beautiful artistry that I get to live inside of. And it's been nurtured my whole life, from my parents to all the education that I've had, and the life that I've built for myself. It's pretty cool.
It's real. I think it's human. It's human, and it's relatable in the sense of like you said, you're making that connection, that one-on-one connection. People hear your songs, the way you tell these stories, the way you sing these stories, I should say, is just, it's immediate that it's coming from a very raw place. It's not something that's, manufactured or, being made to cater to a specific person or thing, just for money's sake. It's really, it's true art, you know what I mean? And it's awesome and refreshing again to see that in a newer artist. I think, again, that's an inspiration. I think it should be seen as an inspiration to many, that this stuff still thrives, and we still have a necessity for people like that out there in the world today, especially in the musical landscape, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So tell me about your latest single, because I think that we need to talk about that. I really love what you brought there. It's got more of a Southern tinge to it. I really dig that, though. I love what you brought to that song. Of course, it's the latest single, so I think it's the perfect example. It encapsulates really where you're at right now. You're also working with a new producer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Someone that's a little bit more of a name.
Yes, Mikal.
You don't mind? There you go.
Mikal Blue at Revolver Recordings, and he has been just an absolute dream to work with. The studio is incredible, his talent, but also, again, I've had the opportunity to work with a number of producers, and I've really come to understand the value of a producer and just how much they can change the lane that you're in. And he does a really good job of just letting me express, and then he takes it and he molds it and he just directs it where I'm already headed, I guess. And he does a really great job of getting that full band rock and roll sound with just like a little nod to country, a little nod to the blues rock, and a little nod to just good old fashioned storytelling. So Good Guy, I actually wrote with Michael and Dalton in the recording studio. And again, we just sat down, we wrote the song, it came out in about an hour. And I came into the room and I was like, there's a lot of man bashing that happens these days lately, and not to take away from anybody else's story. And I understand that there's unfortunate situations that happen out there. But I have been so blessed in my life to have good men and women come into my life. There's this old song, I think it's by Salt and Pepper, that what a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man, mighty, mighty good man. And I was like, I want to do my version of that song. I want to, like, I've got these good men in my life, a muse in particular, and I was just like, I just want to thank his mom. Thank you for being a good man, and thank you for bringing that into my life. And so that was the foundation that we started writing the song on. It was like, let's write about a good guy. They always say the good guys finish last, but they finish last because they get the girl, you know. So yeah, that's where that song originated, was just from like wanting to show love for the good men in my life.
It's incredible. And so again, working in the studio with a new collaborator, seeing their perspective on it, it sounds to me like this worked out seamlessly, and there's going to potentially, if there hasn't already been, more collaborations in tow, right?
Yeah, that was my first collab with Mikal and Dalton, and it was great. I love collaborating. I love co-writing. A lot of the songs that are going to be coming out over the next year have been collaborations. I've got a couple of really incredible artists that I had a chance to work with, because it forces you to level up, to, you know, think a little bit differently. How can we make this a little bit more specific, a little less specific, a little more creative? So it always challenges me and pushes me outside my comfort zone, and that's usually where you find the best artistry.
Right. And you mentioned the, songs already that are going to be released throughout the year. Is that the way you're pursuing this right now? Because I know it's like the Wild West right now. Some people release like, they announce an album and they release like 5 singles. They release like half the album before the album's even out. They used to be, you release like 2-3 singles, you work the album, maybe you release 1 single, the album comes out, and then you start like releasing a few more after that and you let it ride. Now it's just like, put out as much, let's hit that first week sales kind of chart, and that's it.
It's the Wild West, like you said. Like there's no formula that is like the formula anymore. There's a different route to get to the same location. Like we all have the same goals of like, you want to stream it, you want to get a bigger audience, you want to have a bigger crowd. But so yes, we're going to approach it single by single. Everyone's attention span is so short. I don't know how many people are actually getting albums anymore, because it's all about streaming that single. And with our internet culture as it is with TikTok, they were really only looking for 30 seconds. You're lucky if you get 30 seconds before they scroll on. So I've noticed that a lot of songs are getting shorter. They went from 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Now it's like, there's songs out there that are 1.5 minutes long, and that's it. And it's to accommodate our shorter attention spans. So we are going single by single, but the lead up is to release the full album. So right now we've got about, I think, 6 songs fully recorded, and we've got 3 more in the works, and just going to keep rolling them out every couple of weeks.
And then the idea is that by, from what I've read, by the fall, you're going to have an entire album's worth ready to go, ready for release, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
And I will be purchasing that album because I still believe in the power of albums, and I like the album. Listen, to me, the way I've always viewed it is like, I don't know, to me albums are like movies. They're like films, and it's like, would I rather watch a scene and not get the entire context, or read a novel and just pick out 1 chapter and leave it there? Or, no, I'm gonna listen. I need the entire picture in my head, or else to me that 1 chapter, that 1 scene wouldn't make much sense to me. So to me, an album to me is a book. It's a film. That's the way I view it. And I always will. I can't let that go. To me, I can't do it in sound bites. It needs to be somebody bled, sweat for this, to make this record. They actually put they put so much time and effort into this. Is an art. I believe in art, whether it be a painting or, like I said, or a sculpture or a movie or a book. And I think, like, to me, music is that important. I don't know why the mainstream doesn't see it as such, but I do. And I'll always, as long as I live, I'll always believe in the album experience. So I will be purchasing your record whenever that is released.
I appreciate that so much. I approach the album the same way I approach a set list. If I'm doing a performance at the Viper Room, there's an art form that goes into just building a set list, right? Like, you can't have three, sorry that my garbage truck's coming by if it's getting loud.
Okay.
You can't have three ballads in a row. You don't want to lose your audience, right? So you want to build an arc that pulls them in, take that moment, and then explode it back. Like there's this whole arc that needs to happen, and that put that same intention into the album where it takes you on a journey. And so when I was putting this album together, I realized that I had written 3 albums, because I've written hundreds and hundreds of songs. And so I picked my top songs and was putting them in different orders. I was like, okay, this is a pop album over here. This is a more singer-songwriter album. This is the rock and roll. Okay, so we're going to go with that. And then I had written another album that was all about the dating scene in LA. And it was all about like ghosting and breadcrumbing. And so that was a whole little separate piece on its own. But the path that we decided to go on is the more rock and roll, the blues rock track. And yeah, it's just interesting to place the songs to get that storyline arc, but then also be able to take out a single and let it stand alone. But when you put it into the whole movie, like you said, it just completes the story, and you get such a deeper look inside the artist, inside the music, and inside yourself. Because my goal as a songwriter is to be specific enough in my songwriting that you're interested, but also be spacious enough in my songwriting where you can find your own story within my song, where it becomes relatable, of like, oh, I remember that love, I remember that feeling, and then it takes you back, and or that's what I'm going through. That's the other thing. I think as an artist, it's my job and responsibility and a gift that I have, where a lot of people aren't as emotionally tapped in as I am, and it's a superpower of mine. And I find a lot of people don't necessarily have the language, whether it be the English language or the emotional language, to express what they're going through. And that's why so many people connect with music. They're like, that's what I was feeling. That's putting words to my experience. And that's where that connection really builds. And it's so beautiful to be able to provide that for somebody who's, struggling to experience and process whatever they're going through. And to find that expression through somebody else's music or my music as an artist, that's the most fulfilling thing in the world to me, is to be able to be that voice and that expression for somebody else.
Yeah, seriously, thank you for preaching that, because I think any moment I get to have the honor of speaking to somebody about these kinds of things, I think it's important that they stress that, how important it is, and how important it is for people to have music in their lives. It's not just something to pass the time with. I mean, you can do that too if you want, but I think a big part of it, especially if you're someone who needs some sort of escape and something or someone to relate to, because at least for me, that's what music's always been. It's been that best friend for me all my life. It's been something that I could always have there. And there's so many types of music that cater to all types of emotions, any kind of emotion in the book. So really, it's therapy and it's cathartic to listen to music, no matter what it is, because you can tap into all kinds of emotions, right? So thank you for preaching that. That means the world. But tell me, if you don't mind, one last thing about, this is really awesome. And this is one of the first things that I thought was maybe I definitely have to have her on the show, is your association as a contributor to Gritty and Pink.
Oh, yeah. Gritty and Pink is this amazing community of women that started in LA. So we've got the jam scene in LA, and I've been a part of the jam scene. Pre-pandemic, I was performing up to 5 times a week I was at the Viper Room at least once a week with the jams, and it's a very male-dominated culture, music industry in general. And Shira, who is the founder of Gritty and Pink, pulled together all of these female artists and built this incredible community of all female artists. And so we get together and we do our female jam nights. And we only got to do a couple of them before the pandemic hit, but through the pandemic, the Gritty and Pink has still exploded through online performances. And it's just really amazing to have these women come together where everybody's really crazy talented. There's no egos. Everyone's just like, oh my God, you're amazing. You're amazing. What song are we going to do? Okay, let's get up there and do it. And it's this really empowered, powerful community of women. And I'm one of the original members of Greenpink. So it's just really cool to get in on a foundational level and to watch it expand. And so Melissa Etheridge just signed on as, I forget what her official title is. She's an advisor. So it's just exploding over the next couple of months. It's going to be really amazing.
Incredible. That's awesome. I think we need, again, that's something that we need more of. And I'm really excited to hear that this is happening. And also it's cool that you're involved in such a way, and there is a live stream happening tomorrow. Am I correct?
Yes. So the Greenpink live stream is tomorrow evening. I believe it starts at 5 o'clock Pacific time. And it's going to be mental health awareness. So I'm going to do a little interview in the middle of the live stream. And yeah, and I'm going to even sing a song, I think. So
yeah, for those that are unaware, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, which I am a huge advocate for as someone who does deal with episodes of anxiety and depression. I'm sure a lot of people do out there. I think it's important to continue talking about it and not be closed off about it. Like, I think a lot of people would be ashamed of something like that at a certain point in time. And I think now it seems like things are turning a little bit, especially after the pandemic and stuff. I feel like a lot of people have had to deal with that at more of a face value level. So I think it's important that more people continue to advocate and trust themselves enough to just be open about it and, let people know that they're not alone out there, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I think as an artist, again, I've been an artist since I was 5. I mean, even probably before I was 5, but like I really started focusing on it when I was 5. I've always had a really great outlet for my expressions, and being somebody that has such extreme emotions, it takes you to different ends of the spectrum in every different direction. And it's a lot to handle. And I've always learned to handle my emotions through music, through expression. And so music has just been my sanity my entire life. And there's been incredible moments through my creative life where people have come and let me know that my music or a production that I've done has helped them to, one, either understand their own experience or it's maybe to not feel so alone. So I'm trying to figure out which song I want to sing tomorrow, because I think we've all had struggles with mental health as we go through challenges and stress and everything. And so I've got a song that I wrote about a panic attack. I might do that one, or no, I think there's another one. I forget what it's called. I can't remember the names of my own songs.
Okay.
But it's all about, getting through those hard times and what you do to get through them, and that tomorrow is a brighter day and there's always something to look forward to. And yeah, so I'm really excited to be a part of the mental health Greenpink live stream tomorrow.
Right on. I'll be checking that out as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on Sonic Dorms today. Dani, I really appreciate it. Thank you. You've been a delight, really.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for having me on the show.
Feel free to come back on whenever the album is released. I'll be here.
I would
always have an open seat on Sonic Dorms, just letting you know. Yeah. I'm sold. So
I'll see you again soon then.